And now, WWE Superstars Season 6 presents WWE Royal Rumble.
What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to Rassslin Rantin, and today we are doing a review of the Royal Rumble 2020 from World Wrestling Entertainment. It's, I always say this, I always get giddy this time of the year for WWE. It's probably the one time of the year that even if they put out some stuff that's kind of questionable, I still enjoy the Royal Rumble no matter what. The concept is always just fun. It's a playoff situation in WWE. It basically is WWE's playoffs leading into WrestleMania. And, the last 5 years, they've been up and down as far as quality, especially some of the winners people didn't like. But this year's Royal Rumble, I didn't have too many problems with it. There were a couple issues. There's one that, me and probably a lot of fans didn't like too much. But overall, I think the show was good for what it was. And again, when I grade WWE shows, I grade them on what WWE is supposed to be, which is sports entertainment, and not for it being pro wrestling. So I'm going to look at it for what they do. Do they do what they do well? So the actual pay-per-view show opened up with the no-holds-barred match between King Baron Corbin, who has come, I gotta admit, he's come along as a heel. He's a good heel. They've found a niche for him, and it works. Him taking on Roman Reigns, who's also, in some ways, has found his niche. He's not getting massively booed like he used to be years ago. So he's found their spots. So they've been able to do well with these two characters. This match started out as an ordinary, match you see on Raw and SmackDown. Then it stumbled out into the crowd. Of course, they're at a baseball stadium here, so they're all over the place, which played into the end of the match. You get the Usos coming out as well. You get Dolph Ziggler, you get Robert Roode coming in, and they're all having their own little brawl part of the match. There's a point where there's a porta potty. Corbin gets put in the porta potty, which many fans have said he's shit for a long time anyway, so there's a little play on that. Roman knocked the porta potty over. The match ends when they both get up on top of the dugouts, and of course we saw this coming. Roman hits his spear on top of the dugout on the Corbin to get the 3 count. And that was the opening match, which was a pretty good opening match for what it was. And actually, the match they had on SmackDown, the 6-man tag they had on SmackDown was entertaining. And that's what you do with these kind of characters. That's how you make their matches good. And they've done a good job with the Corbin Reigns matches that they've had. It's nothing spectacular. It's nothing terrible either. It's solid, decent sports entertainment style of wrestling. We then get to the women's Royal Rumble match. And the women's Royal Rumble, the past couple years it's been up and down. This year's I liked a lot. It seemed like they laid it out a lot better this year. The big surprise about this one is Bianca Belair from NXT almost dominating the first half of the match. And you'll notice some parallels between the women's match and the women's Royal Rumble booking and the men's Royal Rumble booking. But Bianca Belair, she was holding court for a good long time for the first half of the women's Rumble match. Lots of people came back. We had Molly Holly showing up again. Kelly came out of nowhere. She showed up in here. They had a couple of fun spots with people avoiding eliminations. One of them was Otis, and this whole thing with Otis and Mandy Rose and this whole weird fire and desire thing that they got going on. You thought she was thrown out and Otis is on the floor and she lands on top of him and he's like giggling. It's so goofy, but it's goofy in a way that you actually like it. It's because a lot of times WWE can do stuff like this and it falls flat. This Otis thing, even though again it's goofy and silly, but it's goofy and silly in the right way that you can actually think, okay, that's funny. So that stuff they did was pretty funny. I thought that was, I don't know much about the feud, but it was funny to me. Alexa Bliss lasted pretty long in there, but then everything changed once Charlotte came in. And this is what I'm going to talk about the parallels between the two matches. They were almost booked exactly the same way. Charlotte shows up about halfway through the Women's Rumble, and she takes out Bianca Belair, who was holding court. And that would go on, and this is, to spoil the rest of it, Charlotte would win the Women's Royal Rumble match. Not before, however, we get the Glamazon in there. Beth Phoenix, her and Natalia. Lots of blondes in this match. Lots of King and Corey Graves drooling all over the blondes, which I'm sure Vince is happy about because Vince drools over blondes too. So all the blondes in the match. Drool, 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 drool. It's like, oh, when Kelly came out, it reminded me the first time I went to a baseball stadium. It reminded me the first time I masturbated. I mean, Jesus Christ. Could Corey Graves and the King be more thirsty? Could y'all be more thirsty? I was almost about to get Todd Phillips to get him a drink. They were so thirsty on the commentary. My God, or whoever was doing the commentary with him. Then you had Naomi, of course, she had to do her spot for this year. Naomi coming back, she's got the glow, and now she's got the fro along with it too. She did her, staying alive spot where she hopped on to it was kind of the same one she's done before. Santina Morella came back as the Santina character, and a lot of people I saw on social media were like, I can't believe they're doing this today. It took me a second to think about it. I was like, oh, because we're not supposed to laugh about men dressing up as women anymore because transgenderism is a serious thing now. So I think there may be some blowback from that. There may not be. I mean, it's supposed to be a silly thing, but it might be a distasteful, outdated joke depending on who you are. I don't think the general public's quite there yet with that stuff, but I can see why some people probably were upset about it and like, ooh, that they shouldn't be doing that in 2020. I completely understand why people were saying that, but we got number 30, which I was actually surprised by. I was actually surprised by the number of women from NXT that were in this match. It's like I don't know the tally because I didn't do the count, but I wouldn't be surprised if at least half, if not more, of the women in the Women's Royal Rumble were women who are on NXT because NXT's women's roster is arguably one of the best women's rosters in the world. It's certainly the best in North America of all the wrestling companies, but Shayna Baszler came in at 30. I was convinced she was going to win. Shayna came in there and came down to her and Charlotte, which is a matchup I'd love to see. I'd also like to see Charlotte and Bianca Belair because they had a nice square off. But when it came down to it, it was Ric Flair's daughter, the blonde, the queen, Charlotte Flair, who won the Royal Rumble. I think that makes her and her father the first multi-generation parent-child winners of the Royal Rumble. It's certainly the first daughter-father combination to win the Royal Rumble. So they made, some history was made with that. So a lot of fans didn't like it. I kind of would have preferred if Shayna Baszler had won it, but it's the WWE. It kind of makes sense. If we're going back to Becky, Ronda, and Charlotte from last year as the main event, then I can see why they would get Charlotte winning the Rumble. Plus, it's also payback from Becky winning it last year. And Charlotte coming up as a runner-up. We move on to the SmackDown Women's Championship match. A lot of female wrestling on this show, by the way, too. It was evenly spaced with the men, so they've gotten to that point. So I guess you can give them kudos to that on the Women's Revolution stuff, I guess. But Bayley defending the title. I did not know that much about, because I haven't watched a lot of Monday Night Raw or SmackDown, but I didn't know that they had first turned Lacey Evans' face until I saw her on SmackDown Friday. She gave a pretty impassioned promo. It was a little messy, but it was an impassioned promo about her daughter, her background, and bullying. So it did give some texture to this match. Bayley just basically being the bully, the heel, which is so weird. It's still weird for me to see Bayley in this weird heel mom hair kind of. I don't know what the thing is. I'm still on like Bayley should have been a massive cash cow for them with her old gimmick, but I think times change, things happen. So her doing the mom thing now, the bully thing. Lacey put up a good fight, but in the end, ultimately, it was Bayley mocking her daughter too. Still, they used the kid in this match, which I'm a little, I'm a little F about that. But it was an okay match. I didn't pay too much attention to it, but Bayley got the win and retained the championship. So keep this in mind too. We have all the champions retaining on the show so far. We then get to the SmackDown WWE World Heavyweight Championship match, which is Daniel Bryan taking on The Fiend, Bray Wyatt. The Fiend's entrance, again, is one of the best entrances in the business. I love The Fiend entrance. The matches have not been that good, but this one was actually a decent match. Actually, it's probably one of my favorite matches on the Royal Rumble card this year. It's a strap match between the two. They did away with the very old school rules. Like dog collar, Russian chain strap matches, they all kind of vary in the rules. And a lot of times in the old days, you'd have to touch four corner posts in succession in order to win a match. I always hated that stipulation in the old days. I'm glad it's been, put in the bin of history so far, and they didn't do that. This was pinfall or submission. They lit Daniel Bryan's back. They cut him up a little bit too, but he was all bruised up and marked up and whipped up after this match. His back was just looked like hamburger meat. Bray Wyatt, the Fiend character is just so good. He's such a monster in that ring and the way he portrays the character. Daniel Bryan had got a lot of good shots in. This was a competitive match. It went back and forth. I really dug it. It is the best Fiend match that I have seen. That's not saying much because most of them, the actual matches haven't been good. But this one was pretty decent. And in the end, it was the Fiend winning. By the way, they didn't do the red light for treatment for this match, so they had the regular lighting so you could see it, which I think was a good thing too, so we could actually see the good match and not be distracted by the lighting. But Bray Wyatt does retain the WWE Heavyweight Championship, World Championship over Daniel Bryan, who is now fallen to Bray Wyatt twice now because they met in 2014. Bray Wyatt won that matchup. And Bray Wyatt wins this one against Daniel at the Royal Rumble again. So the crowd was trying to chant the Yes Movement. I'm not sure where they're going with Daniel Bryan. I'm sure we'll find out on SmackDown coming up this Friday. Raw Women's Championship, my bae. Oh my God. The love of my life. Or I should say the lust of my life. But Asuka. That's my bae. Taking on the man, Becky Lynch, for the championship. And I wouldn't really call this long-term. I'm starting to see some people say this is long-term booking. It really isn't long-term booking. It's kind of happenstance booking. Okay, well, oh yeah, we can go back to that thing. I don't think, because it's not like they put Asuka on any kind of trajectory the last year. She just kind of floundered for a while. Then they threw her in a tag team, and then the tag team started working. And then they go, oh yeah, that's right, Becky lost to Asuka last year. Let's kind of go back to that one. So, and I mean, Becky Lynch even pointed this out. She's like, well, all Asuka's done in the last year is done a YouTube channel, easy peasy. That's really true. Up until the Kabuki Warriors, Asuka wasn't doing jack crap until the end of last year. So it's good to see her back in his spot because Asuka's one of the most talented women in the business, and so is Becky Lynch. So they had a good match. It was a little slow in the beginning, but it picked up momentum as the match went on. Again, back and forth, a lot of good shots here. Asuka, got the best of Becky for most of this match. Becky was almost at a point of quitting. The referee was going to call it, and she was begging the ref not to call it because the whole storyline is that Becky wanted to get her win back over Asuka. Asuka's the one woman that she has not been able to beat. Asuka has beaten her over and over and over again. And some parts, they kind of made you think that Asuka might win, but I don't think anybody really thought Asuka was going to win this match. And in the end, eventually, of course, Becky Lynch did make Asuka tap with the disarm her and retain the women's championship. So all the champions retained on the main pay-per-view. No title changes at all, which it's rare to see, but it's cool to see that every pay-per-view does not mean that every champion is going to have a title change. Becky retained the title. She gave Asuka a look of respect going out of the ring, and now we're going to lead into whatever this is going for these characters in the future. It looks like we're going back to a Becky, Charlotte, and possibly Ronda, if Ronda's coming back, main event for WrestleMania for the women's title. Then we get on to the main event, the men's Royal Rumble match. This whole match is predicated on the fact that Brock Lesnar being the Universal... God, I'm getting them confused now. Sorry, go back. Bray Wyatt is the Universal Champion. Brock Lesnar is the World Heavyweight Champion. I know somebody probably already wrote a comment because I can't keep them straight. This is why I hate having two main championships. Have one title so you know which one is which. Brock Lesnar is the World Heavyweight Champion. Bray Wyatt is the Universal Champion. All right. So Brock is the first World Heavyweight Champion to not only declare himself in the Royal Rumble at number one, but wanted to go the distance and win the Royal Rumble from the number one spot. So first, 13 entries or whatever, he just kind of ran through most people. Elias came out. You had John Morrison coming out. You had a bunch of guys coming out to challenge him. Eric Rowan. And Brock easily handled most of these guys up until we got to Kofi Kingston. And that was something I hadn't even thought about. And then when he came out, I was like, oh yeah, that's right, because Kofi got squashed on the debut of SmackDown when he lost the title to Brock. So this is going to be Kofi's comeuppance somewhat. So Kofi came out. He lasted the whole period, which nobody had before that. Then we get Rey Mysterio coming out, who also has a recent feud with Brock Lesnar. I was like, oh man, are we going to get Ricochet and R-Truth? R-Truth, by the way, was not in the Royal Rumble, although I think he probably should have been, which would have been funny. But just for the comedy spot. But then we got Big E coming out, and then Big E tries to rally the troops, and all three of them go after Brock. You're like, oh man, is he going to do it? But Brock manages to persevere. He gets rid of all of them, throws them all out. There's a spot with Shelton Benjamin, who in real life, Brock and Benjamin have history together. They were in college together. They're friends. They played that up here. Like, they used to be on part of the same in the same faction in WWE and all this stuff. Actually, no, they weren't. They weren't in the same faction. They were, that's right. Shelton was in Kurt Angle's faction. Never mind. But they're collegiate stars. Basically, they have history together. And they play it off, and they're going to take on everybody together. And, of course, Brock backstabs Shelton and makes Booker T making a great point about how stupid does this make Shelton Benjamin look? Shucky ducky. So Booker kind of got on my nerves on the commentary a little bit. I hate to say that because I like Booker T, but I don't know, the past couple weeks, his podcast too, he's been saying some kind of silly stuff, but whatever. Shelton gets eliminated, and then we go for a while, Brock continuing to just throw people out, and then we get to basking in my glory. Keith Lee comes out, and I did not know how much I wanted to see a Keith Lee Brock Lesnar confrontation until his music hit, and man, people were going crazy for it. Keith Lee is going to be such a huge star. I'm surprised they haven't called him up already, but he got in there face to face with Brock. Man, that was a cool sight. You even see Brock Lesnar mouth, "Who's this motherfucker?" Because I wonder if that was like shoot or work, because I think Brock may legitimately not know who Keith Lee is, because Brock doesn't watch the product. We all know that. He might not know who Keith Lee was. I'm sure he knew what the spot was going to be, though. He probably knew who he was. But I think it was a cool little character moment of Brock going, "Who is this MFer?" So Keith Lee comes in, he hangs with Brock, then we get Braun Strowman, so the beef is coming in now to the Royal Rumble, so him and Strowman go after them, but then they kind of go after each other. Things get a little bit out of control. Brock winds up getting rid of the two of them. So it's like, oh my goodness, what's going on? Ricochet comes out, I'm like, okay, Ricochet's got a beef with Brock too from Raw a couple weeks ago. Ricochet holds his own, and then we get Drew McIntyre. Drew McIntyre comes in, I'm like, all right, this is another big guy, I'm not expecting much from this. But Ricochet gets a low blow on Brock, who kept telling him to stay down, by the way, on camera. And then Ricochet gets a low blow on Brock, distracts him enough. We get, I think, a boot or a Claymore kick. I think it was just a boot. Brock Lesnar goes over the top rope and is eliminated by Drew McIntyre. And like I said about the first match with the women's match, the booking in this match is very similar to the person who kind of ran the first half of the Rumble would get eliminated by the person who would go on to win it. But before we got there, we had some huge surprises. Edge, as everybody had suspected, and he had denied and said he wasn't going to do it. We all were like, yeah, whatever. Edge does come back, makes his return after 9 years after this massive injury, neck fusion surgery. Edge, the rated R superstar, definitely looking his age. He does look he looks older now, but it's still Edge. But his body he's in shape, man. God, did he get in shape for this? But it's just the gray in his beard, I think, makes him look like he looks like an old lumberjack now. But it's still Edge, and it's cool as hell. But Edge came in there and he was cleaning the house too. He got a good spear on Roman. That was a pretty cool thing. We saw the reunification of rated RKO, him and Randy Orton. That was pretty cool. They were running the ship. Seth Rollins comes in with his goon squad, and I was like, oh boy, he might win it, because they're just kind of taking out everybody. They're taking advantage of the fact that there are no rules in the Royal Rumble, so all of his goons can be out there. So you got AOP and Buddy Murphy out there keeping Seth Rollins in the match, dragging other people out of the match, beating people up all over the place, until they eliminate Kevin Owens and Samoa Joe, who then battle Murphy and AOP back to the dressing room, and Rollins is like, hey, where are you guys going? We still got, that's not the plan. So Rollins is left by himself, and it's an hysterical thing. He's trying to convince Roman to be his friends again, and Roman's like, Superman punches him. They all beat up on Seth, who eventually gets eliminated by, again, Drew McIntyre. So we get into the final stages of the match. We get some pretty cool confrontations. It winds up coming down to Roman, Edge, and Drew McIntyre. Edge gets knocked out. It's down to Roman and Drew. And we almost think, as I was like, they might do Roman again. But no, they did Drew McIntyre, and Drew McIntyre is your winner of the 2020 Male Royal Rumble match. He now has the right to challenge either the Universal Champion Bray Wyatt or the World Champion Brock Lesnar, or whoever may be champion at the time, at WrestleMania. So at the end of the day, it's Charlotte and it's Drew McIntyre both pointing at a sign, the WrestleMania sign, and they are going on to the, well, it's not the granddaddy of them all, that's Starrcade, but they are going on to the showcase of the Immortals, which is WrestleMania. So all in all, again, it was an exciting Royal Rumble. I enjoyed it. Again, there were a couple things I didn't like, but it's nowhere near a disaster that I was worried that it would be after watching Raw last week, because that go-home show for Raw was terrible. But the go-home show for SmackDown was really good, and this was pretty good too. So I give this a recommendation. If you haven't seen this year's Royal Rumble, which I always have a hard time saying for some reason. If you haven't seen it, go definitely check it out. I think it's worth watching. It didn't seem too long to me. The last couple of years it seemed long. This one didn't seem too long to me. So I definitely surprisingly enjoyed the Royal Rumble this year. So that's my take on it. Well, let me know what you guys think. Let your voice be heard in the comment box below. Do you like that Charlotte and Drew won the Rumble matches? What did you think about the match between Bray and Daniel Bryan? The match between Becky and Asuka? Bayley and Lacey Evans was okay. The opening match with Roman and Baron Corbin. And the women's match, do you think we're going to see a lot more of Bianca Belair and Shayna Baszler? And just in that, there's more of the NXT women, since they made up, again, the majority of the women's Rumble match. And then if you include in the some of the retired legends that they threw in, like Molly Holly and Kelly Kelly and a couple other ones, Beth Phoenix, how much of the women's Rumble match was made up of women who are actually on the main roster, the main roster's women's division. So maybe it should have gone to somebody from NXT, to be honest with you. But I want to know what you guys think about that. Let your voice be heard in the comment box below. Until then, I will see you guys for more news, rumors, and commentary here on Rassslin Rantin. Have a good day.